This episode is brought to you by Hired.com. Searching for a new job can feel stressful, scary, and time-consuming. Pushy recruiters try to sell you on roles that you don't actually want, and job boards make you feel like you're throwing your resume into a black hole, never to be seen again. Sometimes you go all the way through an interview process just to find out at the very end that the salary offer or company culture doesn't match what you're looking for. Hired is the world's most intelligent talent matching platform for full-time and contract opportunities in engineering, development, design, product management, data science, sales, and marketing. We make your job search faster, focused, and stress-free. Instead of endlessly applying to companies and hoping for the best, Hired puts you in control of when and how you connect with compelling new opportunities. After completing one simple application, top employers apply to hire you. On Hired, you receive personalized interview requests and upfront salary information so you can make informed decisions about which opportunities to pursue over a condensed timeline. Throughout the process, your dedicated talent advocate will have your back, providing unbiased career coaching to help you put your best foot forward with potential employers. Hired offers access to 4,000 plus innovative employers, including big brands such as Facebook and smaller emerging startups. The size and type of company you want to connect with is totally up to you. We help people find new opportunities in 17 major cities in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Open to relocation? Let us know. Your privacy and autonomy in your job search is of utmost importance to us. That's why Hired hides your profile from your current and past employers. The best part is it's always free for you to find your next job on Hired, no exceptions. We pay you to get hired. Today's listeners can earn double our normal $1,000 hiring bonus by signing up with the show's link. That's right, earn $2,000 for finding your next chapter on Hired. Visit hired.com/React Native Radio to learn more. This episode is brought to you by dailydrip.com. Daily Drip makes keeping up to date on programming skills easier. You already know how much time it takes to find good resources and learn new languages. What if the hard part of that was already done for you? Sign up for Daily Drip and pick a topic that you want to learn about. Want to learn React Native? How about Elm? Maybe you want to brush up on your CSS and HTML. Every weekday, you'll get a short video or reading delivered to you via email. The best part is it only takes 5 minutes a day. We have a special coupon code just for React Native Radio listeners. If you sign up using the coupon code RNRadio, all one word, you'll save $9 on your first month, which means you can try out the React Native topic for free. Don't forget to use the coupon code RNRadio to show support for our podcast. Make learning part of your daily routine with dailydrip.com. Hello and welcome to episode 57 of React Native Radio. I'm your host, Nader Dabit. Today on our panel, we have Ali Najafizadeh.
Hello, guys.
Kevin Old.
Hello.
Today our special guest is Sophia Shoemaker. Sophia, welcome to the show.
Hi.
So before we kind of get into our topic, which is going to be kind of AWS and how React and React Native developers can use AWS if we're not like super familiar with it, can you kind of give us an intro to yourself, how you got into software development and where you work?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. How did I get into software development? I graduated from college with a degree in computer science. I had a job at a company for about 5 years. I was a full stack developer there, doing PHP and jQuery and CSS, kind of a jack of all trades type of job. And then a couple of years ago, I was working on a side project with a couple of people. And at the time at my company, I was using Backbone for a CMS, actually, a custom CMS. And so for this side project, I started out using Backbone because that was what I was familiar with. And I wasn't super happy with how things were going with the project. And so I decided to look into a little more like what other JavaScript frameworks were out there and found React. And at first, I think as a lot of people have had a similar experience, I saw JSX and I was like, what the heck is this? This looks a little weird. But then after I gave it a little bit of time, I was like, oh, this is actually really awesome. And so ever since then, I've just been really, really excited about React. And I just love it. I think it's a great framework to use. And just coming from jQuery, mostly a jQuery experience where you have lots of function files and multiple developers, editing JavaScript files, and just kind of turns into a mess sometimes. I mean, you try to keep your code good, well written, but sometimes it can get a little hairy. I just love how React kind of forces you to break down your application into smaller pieces and really think about how your application should be structured. So I think that for me, React is a technology that I've been writing code for, I don't know, 8 years now. And React is one of the first technologies where I'm like, oh, I really love writing code. Like it's really exciting for me. And so right now I do some freelance work just for a couple of different companies. And I also work with the full stack React team. We just recently completed our book, Full Stack React. It's 810 pages, all about React. And I've just been writing blog posts for them, managing the Twitter account, just tweeting out interesting libraries about React. And I also write their weekly newsletter that's just all news about the latest goings on in the React community. And I just really enjoyed getting more involved in the React community. And it's been a really fun experience the past couple of years.
So the Full Stack React newsletter, how can people go about signing up for that?
So yeah, if you go to newsletter.fullstackreact.com, you can sign up for it there. And then if you're interested in purchasing our book, you can go to www.fullstackreact.com. But yeah.
The website also has some learning material as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you go to the website, you can get a free sample chapter or the first chapter of the book for free. And then if you like the first chapter, you can buy the whole book.
Cool. So I guess going back to how you got into programming, you kind of knew when you went to college, hey, I want to major in computer science. We hear stories these days of people that kind of majored in something else and they maybe design or something and they fell into it. And then, there's a lot of people that actually went to school for it. Were you more like someone that wants to be a front-end developer, a back-end developer, or were you kind of just like, I like writing code and I'm going to go to school and then when I'm done, I'm going to kind of see where I want to go?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting. So I grew up in Silicon Valley and my dad is an engineer. My grandpa's an engineer. Like I kind of had that engineering influence, but I didn't really go into college being like, yes, I'm going to write code. I actually went into college and I was going to be a teacher. And I took a few courses and I was like, oh, this is not really, I don't think this is the right path for me. And I had a friend who was taking a computer science class and was always talking about it. And I was like, oh, maybe I should check this stuff out. So I took the class and I really enjoyed it. And so I just stuck with it. And I think part of it for me too is I wanted to feel challenged in college. Like wanted to feel like, I'm getting my money's worth out of my college education. And so I felt like computer science was a good path to take. I really did. I enjoyed it and wanted to keep going and felt like it was a good challenge. And so, yeah. And I didn't go into college thinking, oh, I want to be a front end developer or back end developer. I think at that time, there wasn't really so much of a distinction. I think it's gotten more so, as JavaScript frameworks have become more ubiquitous. I feel like the distinction between front end and back end has just grown a little bit. But yeah, when I graduated, I graduated in 2008. And so it was like the perfectly wrong time to graduate because everything was crashing at the time. And so it took me a little while to find a job. And the job that I found was awesome. But that kind of led me on the path to doing web application development. I think when I first graduated from college, I wasn't really sure like which path I wanted to take. But I just ended up, getting a job offer at this company and doing web application development. And it's been a really great experience ever since. So like from someone like me coming from a non-technical family, this is kind of interesting. So you're like your father and your grandfather were engineers or programmers. So like, are you able to like sit down at dinner and like talk code with them, or are they on like a different, like, are they doing older school stuff than kind of what we're doing? Yeah. So my dad's an electrical engineer and he was doing more like microwave. Like he didn't write any code really. I mean, I think he took maybe one or two classes, but I mean, he's definitely got that engineering brain where, he's just thinks logically and, and interested in different technologies. And the same with my grandpa. My grandpa actually just passed away in December. And so we've been cleaning out his house, and it is insane the amount of like programming books that he had he died when he was like 92 and had like books on every single programming language you could ever think of.
No way, that's so cool.
He just loved to learn, and he was always asking me like, hey, can you teach me how to do this or this? He didn't need me to teach him anything. He just loved learning and loved technology and programming. Not necessarily. He didn't do that as for a career, but he just loves computers and learning new things. So it's definitely his influences. He's influenced me a lot. I think
that's awesome. So I guess we can jump into some AWS stuff, and I guess to kick that off, you gave a great talk at ReactConf. I was there. I was at ReactConf. We didn't get to meet this time, unfortunately. But
you should have tried to connect at some point.
I know. But can you kind of go over about what that talk was about and kind of a quick overview, and then we'll probably get into some deeper questions, I guess, about AWS.
Yeah, sure. So kind of like what I was saying earlier, I think that with the kind of explosion of JavaScript frameworks, a lot of the logic that used to live on the server, we used to write code on the server that kind of we got all the data from our database and then structured all the HTML and send that back to the client, to the browser. Now with JavaScript frameworks, that logic, a lot of that logic now lives on the client side. And so it's helpful to rethink how we use servers, I think, now that the logic has shifted over to the client side. And that's where Lambda, this technology, AWS Lambda, comes in. It's just a different way of using servers. It's a lot more of a hands-off approach. You just write the server-side code, whether it's talking to a third-party API or connecting to a third-party API or connecting to your database. You don't have to manage your server at all. You just write the server-side code. So I think it's just a really, especially for, I think, front-end developers who maybe don't have experience with writing server-side code at all. I think it's a really easy way to get up and running if you do need a back end without having to manage your box at all. So yeah.
So that's interesting. What would be the initial use case that someone could kind of dip their feet into AWS Lambda as a front end developer, a React developer, or a React Native developer?
Sure. Yeah. I think, at least for me, some simple ways that I've used it are with, if you need, there's some third-party APIs, say you have a secret key or something that you need to use with your third-party API that you can't expose on the client side, right? That's not secure. You could set up Lambda to make those third-party API requests and then send the data back to your clients in a secure way. So I've just set up a couple of projects like that where I need a secure way to talk to a different API without exposing any sort of secret keys or anything like that.
In terms of the cost, how does it work? I know I can just basically because I'm pretty new to Lambda. I was just wondering, is it based on how many times it's being used? As soon as I launch the Lambda, does it actually start charging me, or it just basically it's per use?
Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing that's really awesome about Lambda is it's super cheap. So you're charged for the first 1 million requests that you make are free. They don't charge you for any of those. There's two different ways that they charge you. They charge you per request, and then they also charge you for, and maybe Kevin, you can chime in too on how this all works, but they also charge you for how long your request takes. So if your request takes 100 milliseconds, then you get charged for 100 milliseconds of time, basically. And you can have up to 1 million requests free, and then beyond that, it's every request is is like, I don't know the exact pricing, but you get charged for the request and then how long the request.
This 1 million request is pretty big number, but I've never actually used it. So we're just wondering how many, like based on your experience, does it actually take 1 month? I know it depends on the number of the requests that you actually receive, but based on like for a very simple website and a couple of hundred people, does it actually take, let's say, a month, 2 months, or I just want to know a rough estimate based on the time rather than just the number of the requests.
Okay, so here's how it works. So the first 1 million requests per month are free, and then it's 20 cents per 1 million requests thereafter for the request side of things. And then they charge you per second. So however long your Lambda function runs, they will charge you for that. So if you had, let's see, like say your request runs for, okay, so they have this example here. Sorry, I just pulled it up. Okay, so if you executed your Lambda function 30 million times in 1 month and it ran for 200 milliseconds each time, it would cost you $5 a month. That's how much it would cost you to run for your Lambda function to be run.
This is just the pricing wise. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's amazing, right? It's pretty awesome. So yeah, it's just like really cool for, especially. So there's two things. I think that if you're doing any sort of prototyping, right, like where you're not sure what your traffic is going to be like, you don't want to sit and pay for a box, that maybe costs $10, $15, $20, $30, however much, a box would cost. If you're only getting like, 100 hits a month or whatever it is, you don't want to be paying a ton of extra money when you're trying to keep your costs down. And then also for somebody who's just trying to learn about like server-side programming, it's another really awesome tool because it's a cheap tool that you can use to learn how to write server-side code.
Yeah, Sophia, so on that topic of someone that doesn't know how to get started with AWS, what's your recommended approach for them to get started with AWS?
So I talked about this in my talk. There's a tool called Serverless, and they have a command line tool that makes it really, really easy to get up and running with Lambda. Prior to learning about Serverless, I used AWS's web UI to get my Lambda function set up, and it's a little bit clunky to say it nicely. It's just a little bit frustrating because they have a lot of different configurations that you need to set up, and it can get a little confusing, like especially if you're not familiar with AWS Lambda and even just AWS tools in general. It can be kind of confusing how to get things up and running. And so serverless makes it really easy to get things just running really quickly. And actually at ReactConf, I met a couple of people who work at Rackspace who also use Lambda. Yeah, they use Lambda, but they had also looked at another tool called Claudia. I haven't looked into it at all, but that's also another tool that I've heard of that makes it easy to deploy things to Lambda. But I don't have any experience with that. I just know that it's another tool out there that's similar to serverless, trying to make it easy to get up and running with Lambda.
What's the difference between Lambda and serverless?
So Lambda is Amazon Web Services, their service that they provide, and then serverless is built on top of AWS Lambda. So they have a lot of tooling that makes it easy to upload your server-side code to Lambda itself. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that does. That actually explains a lot right now because I keep seeing them and they look very similar, but I haven't actually tried it out yet. So it's kind of
it's kind of like I like to call it Create React app for Lambda. So like we have React, this this awesome framework And then Create React App is something that's built on top of React that helps you get up and running with a React application without having to configure Webpack or, set up linting or anything like that. And so serverless is the same kind of thing where it'll just help you get up and running with Lambda without having to configure as much as you would without using serverless.
So are you able to hook up, I guess you can connect to an external database, but are you able to have a command line interface where you actually create, I guess I'm thinking more of Ubuntu style stuff, or is it more just you upload your application and you're able to hit that endpoint and return stuff? And also what type of applications? Is it just JavaScript applications that you can run with Lambda?
So yes, as far as languages go, the currently supported languages are JavaScript, like a Node, a Node environment, and Python and Java. But I've also talked with a couple of the serverless guys, and they did say that you can actually upload and maybe Kevin, you can provide some insight on this too, but you can upload binaries. So if you wanted to run Go or some other programming language that isn't officially supported by Lambda, you can actually do that. But I don't have any experience with that, so I don't know exactly how it works. But definitely you can use Python, Java, and JavaScript right out of the box without having to do anything special.
Yeah, they have those that are supported, and I've never had the need to, but you can add essentially what Lambda is a container. So you can, if you want to build whatever language that is, you have to have scripts that build it each time it runs. So it's kind of pointless to do that. And so I think that's why most of us have stayed away from it. I used to write Perl, and if I wanted to have Perl in a Lambda, I would have to build it. And it's absolutely not. So no, I just use one of the first class languages, which, yeah, I think you covered them all. I know there is Java support for anything that's on the JVM could run in there, but I've never met anyone that everyone just says, yeah, you can totally build all that stuff, but I don't know of anyone that's actually setting up their Lambda to do something. So with another language.
That's so cool. Python and Node are first class citizens, but that's interesting because pretty much everything I do right now is in Node anyway, and I think a lot of people that listen as well. So,
sure, yeah, I will say also too, we're using where I work, the backends are written in Scala, which runs on the JVM. So it's a functional language that compiles down or that runs on the JVM, and we are using Scala.js, which is a package that takes Scala and turns it into JavaScript. So we're actually able to run that in a Lambda. So we had our backend team shipping some Scala.js that was going to compute a password, a key derivation function. So, but it's kind of neat how if you can get whatever languages to compile down to JavaScript, then you can run it in Node. So just kind of an interesting interesting hack there. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So, Sophia, what types of apps are you and your company and your clients building on with Lambdas?
I have a little test application that I test out all the new React features about React. It's just a little fun side project that I have. It's called ShopSifter. So I use that. So like I was saying before, I use the Amazon product search API for that and another third-party API. So the basic idea for ShopSifter is if you wanted to buy something, if you were going out, you wanted to find something online like shoes, for example, and you didn't know what type of shoe you wanted. You just know you needed black shoes or something. Normally you'd go to maybe your 5 favorite websites like Nordstrom or whatever, Nordstrom, Target, and whatever other shoe stores are your favorite. So my idea was to consolidate all those into one website, so you wouldn't have to go to multiple websites. You could just see all their prices in one spot. And so I'm using Amazon's product search API and then another third-party API to get all the pricing and information about all kinds of different products. So I use Lambda to make those third-party API requests and like bundle up all that information, send it back to the client. And the reason I used Lambda was just for all the reasons we've been talking about. It was cheap, and I didn't want to have a box just sitting there mostly idle for most of the time, because it's just a little side project that I'm not, I'm like not sending any traffic to. It's just for me to just play around with React, their new latest React tools and libraries and stuff. So that was my main motivation for using it. And then one of my other clients, they have some needs for displaying logs and just a variety of data that's actually stored in S3. And so I've been using Lambda just to talk to S3 and also talk to their databases as well, just because I like using Lambda actually. And it just makes it easy to get up and running. I don't have to like set up a box or anything. Like it's just really, really nice to have that, not have that burden of having a box to maintain when that's not my like forte. My forte is not in DevOps or server, maintaining servers or anything like that. So
my question was, well, actually I had two questions, but the first one was, do I have to write back to the AWS Lambda? Do I have to write function per Lambda, or can I have multiple functions running in a same Lambda? This is something that I've seen a lot of people confused. I said, do I have to write the entire logic into the one function, and then when I actually run it, Lambda is going to run it? And then the other question is, it's kind of like similar to that one, but when Kevin talking about Java and Scala, because I used to be a Java developer, and the boot time of Java is pretty horrible. So let's say if I write a very large application in Java in Lambda, do they actually charge based on the boot up? Because it takes a couple of seconds to boot up sometimes. It depends on the applications. But back to the first question, like, should I actually write a very small function or like per Lambda, or should I actually write the entire applications into one function? You can just elaborate on that.
So the way I've done it is usually just one function per Lambda. So one function per task, basically, right? So one function would maybe make a request to a database and get information from the database. And then another function might make a request to a third-party API or something like that. So the applications that I have built, maybe I have like 3 or 4 different functions set up. Maybe Kevin, that's as far as I've gotten as far as Lambda goes, as far as the scale of what I've done with Lambda. But maybe Kevin has done some more larger scale applications with Lambda. But for me, one function per task basically is how I've set up. But I do think that's an interesting subject to talk about. I think that this whole like serverless environment movement is still new, and so figuring out a good way to structure your application that makes sense, especially if you have a large team, is something that definitely, we should figure out. Or I don't know if that's a good way to say it, but I think that like I was saying, just structuring these microservices or serverless application is having that structure is an important aspect of this newer technology. I don't know, Kevin, do you have any insight on that?
So you're right. It's definitely one function per Lambda. You really expose one handler, as they call it. Yeah. And behind that, you can do let's say that I need to do multiple things to get the response, like go to the database and then transform what I get back from the database into a different data structure and then send that to the client. That's your one function. So another way to think of it is just like the routing in an Express.js application or in any web framework on the back end. That routing layer, that says that you can, slash user goes to this one function. Like you're going to go do some things and get some data back and send it to the client. That's really what the Lambda part is. And I completely agree with the patterns. We've got to figure out the right patterns for what we're building with all these serverless functions, because you can have these microservices and you can have a lot of microservices. And if you don't organize them in a way that makes sense, then you can get into trouble. One other thing I'll offer is that the serverless framework does allow you to expose different methods on your endpoint. So your Lambda, say that you have 5 or 10 endpoints, like /user, /product, /whatever. You could, in your handler, you can have essentially its own little router that you would offer. You would have that route tied to a specific function. Again, it's one function within your handler. And you could keep similar pieces of a service together in one. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I've done the majority of that to where I would keep essentially would have one Lambda that goes, and it would have a few things inside of it, but those would still be separated by route. Route meaning API gateway. And I guess it's a good segue into API gateway. Do you want to tell us a little bit about API gateway and how that fits into this, Sophia?
Oh, yeah, sure. So Lambda functions by themselves, they need some sort of event to get triggered. And so if you have a React application and you want to, have some sort of HTTP endpoint that talks to some sort of backend, you'll need to use API gateway. And API gateway sets up an HTTP endpoint for you, which then will trigger a Lambda function. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier with like the confusing web UI for AWS is you have to set up these two different, you have to not only set up your Lambda function, but you also need to set up API gateway so that your Lambda function can get actually triggered. And so that's why the serverless tool is really great, is because it will set all that up for you. We'll set up the API gateway and make sure that the Lambda function gets triggered properly whenever you hit the HTTP endpoint that gets that is part of the API gateway setup. So yeah, serverless makes it all just like one command and you're done basically, which is awesome. And I really, really like using it.
Have you seen any local implementation of Lambda? So let's say if I want to try out, but I don't want to go into these details of AWS, is there any implementations so I can basically run it local, even for a small one? Like any open source projects can actually does that, kind of like a local serverless that I can basically talk to my local server. Environment. And once I'm confident that I can do it, I can basically upload it to the AWS. Yeah,
I as far as I know, I don't think there's any like local way to locally test, have the like Lambda environment on your machine, basically. I mean, you can definitely set up multiple Lambda function, you can set up multiple functions. You have like, your development Lambda function and then your production Lambda function. So you can upload your function to your development environment and test it there. And then once that's good, upload it to your production Lambda environment. But as far as testing locally, that's one thing that I think is still not quite there. I know that serverless, you can run, once your function is uploaded, it has some tools that allow you to like test it and make sure it's running on the command line, or make sure it's working properly via command line. But yeah, as far as I know, that's one thing that's kind of lacking, is being able to test things out locally.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and spoil one of my picks, but I'm still not certain if this is a thing or if this is actually working, but I actually found out about a thing called Local Stack that's put out by Atlassian. So the Jira people.
Oh, cool.
And it's on GitHub. It's github.com/Atlassian/local stack. And it says, again, I literally found out this today about 3:00. And I didn't even realize what we were talking about tonight, but so I was like, hey, I'll take it as my pick. But it says it sets up a local version of API Gateway, Kinesis, DynamoDB, DynamoDB Streams, Elasticsearch, S3, Lambda, Firehose. It says like most all the services. And so what's really cool is that they've got a command on there where you can run it in a Docker container. So you don't even have to set up Python and NPM and Java that it needs. So the thing is, I literally haven't even tried it, but I'm a little, even if it does work, I'm a little reserved. I would say, just like Sophia was saying, it's easy enough to just, like literally, if you go in and create, set up an Amazon account, create an IAM user, you'll get a key, a client key and a secret, and then you can just upload it to your What's cool about serverless is it gives you a stage, and the default stage is dev, and you can just upload it to their service, and you're not. I mean, the cost is one of the things as we've been talking about. It's super duper cheap. You're not going to spend any money, even developing. Like it's going to, and if you do, it's going to be like a penny. Like the entire penny is going to be spent. And that's it, and it's like, okay, well, you wrestle with it and you're like, okay, I'll spend the penny for it. It's totally worth it. So what's cool about that is that like when it's ready to deploy, you just change the stage, or we just do service deploy with the production stage, and then it's live and it's scalable. So.
This is the interesting thing that Kevin was basically talking about. I didn't know all these information that you just said, and these are very valuable information, because if somebody wants to learn AWS Lambda, it's going to take at least a day, but to figure out all the pieces and why they have to do it, and then what's the price. And sometimes people are a little bit worried about the pricing because they are kind of like indie developers and they just want to try something out. And I've seen a couple of people when I was I talked to a couple of people that they, by accident, they did something in AWS and they end up charging a lot of money. So that's why I keep asking these questions, just to make sure that I fully understand the concept. But yeah, thank you.
Well, you can certainly run up a bill, but you're not going to do it with Lambdas. Lambdas is the last thing you'll do it with in their infrastructure. But certainly, just my advice is to just try it out and look at your bill and put they'll let you put an alarm on there that tells you like if it goes over $20 to send you an email. So yeah, if you just do that, then you'll be okay.
Cool, thanks.
I think that the local stack thing that you're talking about, Kevin, is really interesting to me, because I was going to mention something about Docker. I just recently started using Docker for one of the clients that I work for, and it's amazing. Like, I love that I can just, just set up my local environment exactly how it would be, like in production. And I think that's a really awesome tool. So I think this local stack thing could be really interesting, like using Docker to set up basically a Lambda environment and have it and test it locally. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I want to play with it and then potentially put it in. Like, I could see if it works and does the things that it should do, like with other AWS. Yeah. That's the other thing too. It's got to do all of it. And it actually uses the Bodo 3 library. And so that's what the Python interface to AWS tools. So it sounds good. So If it does everything that I want it to do, then I could see it living on our CI server, so that when we deploy we push new code, we would have it run like a full integration suite with these functions. So actually hitting the database, the DynamoDB. So like literally, you mentioned it a minute ago, the serverless invoke function that you can invoke your methods in serverless. It'll actually go and hit the Lambda and tell you what the response is.
Yeah.
Right from the command line. We could do that here with the serverless invoke test. It'll let you invoke that. And if local stack lives up to its promise, then we could do that on the CI server to completely test everything.
Right.
Yeah, this could be a really big thing. So I don't know. Like I said, I just found out about it today. So if it doesn't turn out to be the amazing thing, then I just saw a link somewhere. So
yeah.
And just to reiterate, it's called Local Stack.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome. And just to reiterate what Ali was saying, like this has been such a valuable conversation for me, because like, all this stuff I would have taken, days or, even longer to kind of gather all this information together. So being able to hear you and Kevin kind of talk about all this stuff has been really awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun to talk about all this stuff. I really love these tools, and I love React. So the combination of all of these things is just like a real sweet spot for me as far as like getting really excited about creating web applications.
I have a question, and this may be kind of a dumb question, but I'm kind of curious. If someone wanted to actually host an entire React application, like using a Node server, would this be like a way to do it? Or is this more strictly for like API type of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I haven't personally done it, but I'm sure you can. I mean, you have the Node environment, Node there on Lambda. So it's definitely possible, to have your whole application run, on with Lambda.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm curious if it would be cheaper or more expensive. And it sounds like for 1 million requests or whatever, for the amount of money that we were just saying, like in a month, if you had like a website that wasn't really getting that much traffic, it might make sense, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, not just low level traffic sites, but, if you have a script or something that runs once a day, or, if just something that's kind of sporadic, any sort of script that's kind of a sporadic thing that doesn't happen regularly, it's awesome to just have something, just basically have a server there available to you, but you don't have to pay for it on a monthly basis.
Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get to the picks. Ali, do you have any picks tonight?
Yeah, I do. I have 2 picks. Since we talk about Docker, apparently Docker is just a wrapper, a best API for working with some tooling that already provided by Linux. And as far as I know, it's been around since 2008. So I was shocked at the very beginning, but Docker is just a best API to work with those. And then I was looking around and I found a very interesting project called a Bucker, which is implementation of the entire Docker in Bash in 100 lines of code, which was amazing.
Wow.
And it works exactly the same as Docker, all the APIs and everything. So I definitely tell people to take a look at it. It is a pretty interesting project. And my other pick is a project. I've been into a graph database lately to do some social graphing. And I found a very interesting project called Kaylee. So it's written in Go, but you can actually attach it to a different type of backend, such as Postgres, MongoDB, BoltDB, a lot of interesting backend. And recently, it's been, I think 8 days ago, they launched a GraphQL query language on top of it. So your database is a graph database, and you can actually query your graph database with GraphQL-like query, which was kind of like interesting since we are going into the GraphQL world these days. So I'm working on that. It's a little bit mind-boggling and mind-bending and mind-blowing things when you actually go from traditional tables and then you move on into the graph. But I definitely tell people to look into it. It actually simplifies a lot of things, especially if you have a lot of joint table in traditional databases. I definitely tell people to take a look at it.
Awesome. And we'll link to that. But can you repeat the resources one last time?
The first one is Docker. Instead of Docker, you just basically put B instead of D. And I've actually put the link. And then the other one is Cayley, Cayley. I hope I pronounced it properly.
Great. Sophia, do you have any picks tonight?
Yeah, my pick is our book. We just finally finished the whole book. It still has a few revisions to go through, but you can purchase it on fullstackreact.com. It's a really awesome resource. It's 810 pages, so it's got to be good, right?
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I saw it at the React Conf. It had this big disclaimer saying this is not complete or something like that, but still got a chance to take a look at it, and it looks great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
Okay, awesome. Kevin, do you have any picks?
Yeah, I do. I have several. So, like I mentioned earlier, the local stack from Atlassian that can says it's a fully functional local AWS cloud stack. And I was looking down at the README since we were talking earlier, and it does say that it can fit into CI servers, so that all the services that it implements runs in separate processes. So this could be a really awesome thing for deploying and testing serverless architectures. My next pick is the set of there's a blog post on the React Native blog from earlier in the month called Better List Views in React Native. I'm pretty excited for this because every time I go to implement a list view, I forget the syntax and I have to go to another project and copy how the data is massaged in React Native to be able to go in that list view. So the flat list and the flat list and the section list are probably the ones I'll stick with going forward. But excited to see those in. I believe it's in the 0.43 release candidates. And then my last pick, and Ali, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think this is something from one of your projects, but in the web view for React Native, we're now able to get post message from the web view. Is that something that's related to your React Native web view project?
Yeah, so I was talking to a couple people, and unfortunately, my project is a little bit behind. But I've seen somebody actually implement the post message. So now you can actually directly communicating with the JavaScript executing inside your React Native web view, which is pretty exciting because it's similar to Service Worker or window. Whenever you actually open a window in the web, that's the only way you can actually communicate with it. So it's a very solid implementation, and I'm really happy that somebody finally add this feature into the project.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That's what I was picking, and I thought that it may have been related to yours, but I'm glad that you signed off on the implementation because we're definitely using it in our app that we're building, and it's priceless. If we didn't have that, it would be pretty difficult to do what we want to do. So, highly recommend that if anyone's got content that they're displaying in a web view that you want to get some information from the DOM when certain events happen that you use the on post message. Because what we're actually doing is we use the inject JavaScript, and we actually have the post message broadcast some very, very basic Redux actions, so that that's the payload that comes back in the post message, so that we know what happened in the web view based on its listener. So like on scroll or touch end, something like that. We when the flux action, or I'm sorry, the Redux action comes back from the post message, we actually go ahead and just hit call dispatch on that for our parent application, and it just dispatches that action with the data. So yeah, without doing that, without the on message implementation was really, we weren't really sure how to do it. So I was glad that was added.
What version of React Native was that added? Was that just added in the latest release?
No, it's in, so the patch I saw was in January 25th. So it's in React Native 0.41 and higher.
Okay, awesome. I'll try to find a link to that and link to it in our notes.
Yep.
My pick is a GitHub repo from Andre Staltz. It's called Staltz/toy-rx. It's at github.com/Staltz, STALTZ/toy-rx, and we'll link to that. But basically, it's a very, very simple implementation of RxJS. And it's really cool because you can basically download it and play with all the different operators. And I wish I had this when I first started learning, but because it's just so great, and it kind of boils down all of the operators into the most useful ones and the ones you're kind of going to use when you first start using RxJS. For me, when I started looking at RxJS, there were just so many operators, and it was between a major and two major versions. So I was getting confused between some of the discontinued operators, and the documentation was kind of not consistent. But now it's more consistent, and then you can kind of take this repo and play around with it and look at the documentation and get up to speed very quickly. It's very well done. So I would encourage anyone that's looking to learn RxJS to check out this repo. Okay, well, that will wrap up this episode. Sophia, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Absolutely.
Really
we enjoyed it. Look forward to maybe having you on again in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.